Hi guys, what's going on? And welcome back to another episode of Conqueror's Blade. So, today, we have got the Tseregs. Well, that's the pronunciation I'm going to go with anyway. It's probably wrong. But yeah, I've been playing these guys for just a while now. I'm only level 10. There's definitely a lot more leveling up to do with them. Because the veterancy line does get a little more interesting. Particularly as we get to the end, we get some of the knockdown or bleed damage choice that you get. But I've been playing them enough to get sort of a bit of a decent idea how they're going to perform. And kind of how we're getting on with them. So before I actually got these guys, when I looked at them in the unit challenge unlock tree, this was the unit I was most excited for. You know, heroic era unit, 4-star unit, going to be sort of low to mid 200s on the leadership. I think they're actually 235, so decent amount of leadership, and the fact that they were really emphasising the blunt damage, and that made it really interesting to me. Because a lot of stuff doesn't have great blunt defense, and then you know that sort of it's almost like a prefecture guard with maces, and I thought that was really kind of interesting. So I thought they were going to be really quite good, and they're okay. But I must say, all in all, I've been pretty disappointed with them. I mean, they look really cool, and one of my favourite looking units so far in the game. I love the big old mace, and up to the little pointy hat as well. It's kind of cool. But in terms of actual their performance, I've not been all that impressed. And it's not for their lack of damage. So, first off, their main ability is their charge. Their shield rush charge is really powerful. It feels a little bit like a mini Reaper sort of charge is how I describe it. Or maybe a little bit like what Prefecture Pikes used to be all those times ago. It's a really quite hard-hitting charge. And it's nice. It does a decent amount of damage. And it is one of the best things about the unit. But the problem is the unit's so soft that it just dies so quickly to any sort of ranged fire, and it doesn't really do particularly well in any sort of extended form of melee. Even after you sort of hit a unit with your charge, they tend not to do brilliantly unless you're really there on the front line with your hero as well, you know, knocking everything, getting the stun so they can get the damage in. You know, a lot of the unit talks about the increased chance to bypass enemy shields while attacking, which is what a good chunk of the veterancy line is taken up by. But because they don't really perform so well in extended melee combat, then it kind of makes it all a bit redundant. Because really, it seems to be the bulk of the playstyle seems to be charge in, get the damage in, then try and extract yourself so you can get your cooldown and charge back in again. Another 60 seconds, because the cooldown on the charge is 60 seconds, so it's really quite a long cooldown, and on a unit, particularly on a unit that's, you know, sort of built around its charge, kind of it's not that great. Their defensive values are pretty low when you get to this sort of tier, when you're sort of a 4-star unit, 470 piercing and slashing. The health's not too bad. That will get a bit higher as well as they continue to level up down the veterancy line, so maybe get to sort of 9,000, something like that. But again, not really amazing, and yeah, good charge, pretty mediocre in melee combat. So not quite the unit I was expecting it to be. You get 28 people in the unit, which isn't so bad. So not a bad unit, but not amazing. So unit kit costs while we're here are pretty reasonable actually. 2,700 for a unit kit. It's not too bad for a 4-star unit. Pretty pleased with that, although hopefully they'll implement actually being able to build these kits pretty soon, because I'd like to see that in the game as well. Anyway though, let's hop into some battles now and kind of see how we have been getting on with them. So I've generally actually been finding them to be not so good in siege battles. I've been kind of getting on better on with them in field battles actually. And I think it's because with that a very long charge cooldown, I've become sort of a bit nervous about when to use it. So for example, in this case, I absolutely should have used it here. There was more prefecture guards than I kind of thought they were just very bunched up. But I was nervous about just wasting my charge on a couple of units, and so I ended up going in hand to hand. I actually kind of get away with it because there wasn't really any enemy heroes really throwing too much support behind it. And, you know, the Tseregs, for their problems, they do decent amount of damage when you can use your hero just stun an enemy unit like that, so they don't get hit back too much. And we clear out those guards without too much trouble. So as they're doing that, I just push on to deal with some of these Iron Reapers. Their hero's basically been driven back, although at least their hero is an archer anyway, so it's hard for him to do too much commanding of them in this sort of situation. And again, they're out of their charge, so not in a massively strong position. The Tseregs actually do reasonably well against Reapers because they hit relatively well because of the high blunt penetration. and Reapers don't have, or pretty much no unit has as good blunt penetration resistance. So here, when I get a bit of a straighter line, I do go in for a charge. You know, we flattened those squires who are on the flat part of that wall pretty well. I mean, they died pretty easily with that charge. And that is the strength of the Tseregs. That's where they work really well. And that was worthwhile, but now I'm caught on cooldown, and this is one of the problems with them. You know, I now need to assist the guys on A, but I've basically got no charge. This is where I wish I had a charge. And, you know, if I was in Prefecture Guards, I probably would. So that's where I feel like the Tseregs kind of fall down a little bit, because now I'm using them in melee, and they get away with it. You know, we've got 3 or 4 heroes here, we massively outnumber the unit. Yeah, but we still take quite a bit of damage. Not an amazing unit for this sort of situation. So let's hop over to a field battle. You can kind of see I only just got the recording on in time. Just managed to catch that initial charge. It just flattened a unit of Prefecture Pikes there. You know, against sort of an unshielded unit like that, these guys are great in the charge. They do flatten really quite effectively. So I find they tend to work pretty well in field battles. I'm always using like a mini cavalry with their charge. The only downside is, of course, you have to be really quite careful about enemy cav because, of course, field battles are so cavalry dominated, and it's very easy to get taken out. As well, you know, obviously Rattan Rangers being really prevalent at the moment in a really strong position are something that you've got to try and run away from quite a lot of time as well. So they could also make life a little bit difficult. So while that was going on, I was thinking, well, what are we going to do? I wasn't quite sure what we wanted to do. I was thinking, well, maybe let's start trying to push A. We have got all these Rattan Rangers here in the back. Oh, they're not Rattan Rangers, actually. They're just Horse Archers. Decide, you know, sod it, let's go for it. See how we do against this shielded unit. So we do get a decent amount of damage in. Not a great amount. We don't actually break the unit completely, but we are charging a fully shielded unit. So not that surprising. But we do at least do a lot of block break, and we provide enough sort of an emphasis to actually take out quite a bit of health, and then the unit completely collapses before us. So that was nice. I was pretty pleased with that. This poor Jewel Blade's got far too deep. Then I'm thinking, wow, unit generally has lost quite a lot of health. You don't have to start receiving much range fire before this unit really starts to lose the bulk of its health. Because they, as I say, they really don't have much defensive stats. Their piercing damage, as we saw, was just sort of mid-400s. They take quite a lot of range damage. So their health goes down fast. So I wanted to get back to supply point, get myself healed up. Because I hadn't actually lost that many models, even though most of them were pretty low health. So we fall back and we supply a bit. Things were going pretty well at this point in the field battle because we've got all the points. Or, okay, now we've got 2 points, but it was going well. And I'm just kind of trying to decide where I wanted to go next. I'm trying to get into positions where I can sort of exploit enemy infantry, but at the same time trying to avoid enemy cavalry, at least frontally charge. And of course trying to avoid enemy Horse Archers or Rattan Rangers as well, because I can't really catch up with them, and the range damage they do is quite effective. So I was just kind of having a bit of a look around now. And this is kind of where they don't do so well in field battle, when there's not sort of battles they can directly get involved in, and when everyone's sort of manoeuvring around. But I still find they tend to do better than in siege battles. I think siege battles, there's too much going on for them. You know, yes, occasionally you do find those smaller fights sort of around the outskirts, but if you throw these guys into a big sort of melee right in the middle, then they just get flattened. You know, an archer uses an explosive arrow on them and half their health's gone. And that's the sort of problems with them. They're just too soft. So I saw there was quite a lot, including a significant amount of range pushing on A, so I decided, well, that's not really something I want to do. That's not really going to work for me. So I'm skirting around. I'm trying to see if we're going to get any more support on A, because if we're going to start getting friendly people pushing up a little bit more, that's kind of where I want to go. And I was thinking about that, and then I saw that we've got someone on the cap, so I thought, oh, well, let's head back down. I know we've got those halberdier sergeants there who could be quite a threat. I don't want to charge into the front of them, otherwise that'll be a very short-lived game for me. So I'm sort of thinking, waiting a little bit, you know, those halberdier sergeants are there, I need to get on their flank. And then the friendly cavalry goes in, which deals at least with a chunk of the enemy cav. So I was quite pleased with that, and I start to move down to the cap point. And you can see I was sort of thinking where these halberdier sergeants are, and they go for a charge, and that was a real mistake on their point, because it meant it missed me, and I was able to turn, side on, and charge in. I actually turn away slightly as I deal with these cav sort of in front of me, but you see me do a real good chunk of damage, get about 10 unit kills on those halberdier sergeants with the charge. And then the rest of the men just go sort of work melee in the actual unit. And that's where, as I was saying, they're not so good in melee. You see I took quite a few losses sort of after the initial charge, just when they're fighting. We then sort of deal with what we've got left. We actually managed to really take out a good chunk of the enemy cav. And then I only had 11 people left, so I'm thinking, right, let's get the hell out of here. Let's get back to that supply point. I know 11 isn't that many, but it's still a good chunk of unit. And as I say, they do have that decent charge damage, so I thought it was worth putting back, healing up, and keeping the unit out at least for a bit longer when we've still got quite a good chunk of this field battle left anyway. So I thought it was worth doing. So that kind of really leads to the bulk of the unit. Unit review and my opinion on them. They're okay. They're not as good as I was expecting them to be. The blood damage is nice. It means you get a higher proportional amount of damage than if you did slashing or piercing, because everyone has high piercing defense, everyone has high slashing defense. So you know your rates of armor penetration aren't as effective, and these guys have 1200 blunt penetration, and and then 1300 blunt damage. So the damage they actually do is pretty good, including against more heavily armored units, things like Reapers and stuff. It still does a good chunk of damage. So they do damage nicely, and of course, as you can see, their charge is really rather nice. But in any sort of extended fighting, they don't do so well. And they're just too much of a glass cannon for me to really enjoy them. And I just too often get killed unnecessarily. So I made a bit of a mistake here. As finally off this finished field battle, I realised I'd gone wrong. So I just thought, well, I can't get away now, not with those rapid rangers. So I'll go for the charge. Actually do quite a good chunk of damage against those cav. Pretty much wipe out that initial unit of cav, those Radden Rangers. But there's then a second unit of Radden Rangers right behind them. And that's just too much. I can't deal with 2 units of Radden Rangers. We've got 1. Can't deal with the second one. And yeah, that really about sums up my opinion of the Tseregs so far. Pretty decent unit, but not amazing. Very much a glass can. But I'd be super interested to hear what you guys think in the comment down below about this unit, so do be sure to let me know. We'll be looking at more units going forward. Obviously, I'm going to go for the Tseregs. Can't pronounce that. The tier 5 cavalry, they look really kind of interesting, so we'll be having a review on them at some point in the future when I finally get them unlocked. And of course, subscribe to the channel for a load more Conqueror Blade content, and I shall see you guys all on the next video.